There we go. Alt R. Should have known that.
Got it.
And now we got to say okay.
Yeah, you got it over there. Okay.
Thanks.
No, I'm not going to say all that again, but we're going to start off talking about stuff before and after a contest, basically. Whoops. And the up and down buttons aren't working. I tried that.
Oh, God damn it.
You got the focus off of the
Yeah.
projection now.
Let's try that. There we go.
There we go.
Get good at this.
There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes on for the whole year before a contest, really. In this case, starting out with some of the summer repairs and stuff. This little gear deep inside the TIC ring rotor had a little set screw through that nylon thing into the pot arm, and it kept coming loose. You can go on my website. There's a maintenance blog. I keep all pictures of all this stuff. There's like 3 or 4 other pictures of this. But basically, I drilled all the way through the shaft and put a screw through it. And it's never going to come loose.
Something else will break instead.
Oh yeah, well that's a given, but at least that won't happen again. Sometimes we have to exterminate intruders. Those guys, that's one of the 80-meter 4-square verticals.
Let alone
those.
Hopefully not what you needed to maintain this year.
No, but I happen to be cutting the grass and weeds right along the bottom of it. And so where the heck are these things coming from? I hadn't even noticed it until I was cutting the grass around it. Really fun. Big summer repair job was I replaced all the carpet that was in the shack. It was really old, dingy, gray stuff. Ugh. Now at least it's got a little color and I can keep it clean again. So all this stuff goes on, weeks, months ahead of a contest. The big change I made was all these rig blasters. There was one on each station. I was only using like 2 mic isolation transformers in it. I wasn't using the communication to the rig, the CW keying, wasn't using any of that anymore. So I decided to get rid of all them, replace it with 2 of these little pile noise bluster filters, which all they are is isolation transformers. And the sound card, USB sound card that I use for the remote operators. All that gets bundled together, a nice little bundle hides in the back. I took a picture before I bundled it up because once it's bundled up and stuffed in the back of the table, you can't see it. But all these wires, connectors, rig blasters, all gone. Whoops. Whatever. I can't go back to it, but they're available for $50. I didn't bring any with me today, though. Other things is I have web pages for not only the station that you can go see what I've got and the ongoing maintenance, but also this is one that's just for the remote operators. They can see what's going on with the remote station before they come in. And I changed how that was all organized this summer too. And of course, the coffee pot, got to keep that stocked up. Ooh, that's a blurry picture.
You clean it every summer?
More or less. I take everything off of the table, clean what's underneath, and then put everything back on it again. There's something interesting you do. Anybody that's on Medicare, you get these Medicare Advantage plans. I got one that gives me $40 a month to spend $40 a quarter to spend in their store for over-the-counter stuff. I had a couple bucks left. I didn't know what I wanted to buy, so I just bought a whole bunch of cough drops. It comes in handy for sideband contests. And of course, there's the inevitable repair of headsets. I've got like 8 or 9 of those Heil Pro sets and a couple of the newer ones, and there's always 1 or 2 of them that the boom breaks off or the cord goes flaky. So they end up going to Heil Hospital occasionally and come back all nice and new and shiny. Okay, starting to talk about thinking about a contest now, getting into maybe August, September. Got to start thinking ahead, finding the operators. I know you've probably all seen my emails to the YCCC reflector. Once I start getting operators, they get emails every week, 2 weeks when something else happens or comes up. They also start thinking about the propagation. Finding operators, YCCC list, you've all seen those. But I also have a list of operators from last year. I have an email list that anybody's welcome to join. I advertise it every now and then. It's an opt-in list. I won't put you on it unless you ask to be on it. And I send that out before major contests when I'm looking for operators for multi-op stuff. And if you're a registered remote operator on my station, I email everybody that's a registered remote operator, figuring, well, you want to operate the station, maybe you want to operate it for a contest. And there are a few drawbacks in that. That's where we ended up, especially in sideband. I got a bunch of operators that were really interested and really wanted to help, but they weren't club members. It's kind of hard. They're not there to sign them up. They're remote, so but they're really interested, and they did help out quite a bit. Then I also have stuff on Facebook. I have my Superstation page and the Friends group. The YCCC group gets a message. The NOBARC, which is the Northern Berkshire Amateur Radio Club, that's the local Berkshire County group. And then in HCRA, there's a bunch of interested people in the Hampden County Club. I've gotten recruits from there occasionally. Right, Steve?
Yeah. Been a while though.
Yeah, gotta watch out for some of them.
Yeah.
But we have gotten some to also be joint members too. So think about it. I'm communicating with a whole different group of people. We get different interests, different whatever. But I try and keep the messages all kind of with information specific for the contest that's coming up. I have a Google sheet that I use for scheduling operators by band and hour. Put a link to that, links to the operator wiki pages, which are the pages for the remote operators and also for guest operators that come out. And links for the how to get for setting up the remote operators in case there's somebody new. And then I always add in the list of all the operators that have signed up for the contest so that everybody knows everybody else that's planning to come out. When we get down to the last couple of days, I'll put in notes about food. I don't do coffee, so somebody volunteers to bring coffee and creamer. I don't usually do bagels, but I get somebody that brings those and cream cheese and whatever. Remind everybody what the sleeping arrangements are with the bunk rooms and all this good stuff. And then, of course, the Friday of the contest, hit the weather and the road conditions. Always a big thing up there. If you've ever been out there and you go across this horrible bumpy paved road, it's been completely rebuilt. It's a speedway now. We hired a new cop in town, a retired state police officer. He likes the radar gun. He's found the good places to park along that road now.
You don't give out the K1TTT get out of jail free card?
Well, and I also put in things, equipment status, what's broke, what's not quite working right, other things, and some notes on the propagation. What are we expecting disturbance? Are we expecting flares? What's coming up? This was one anybody that is interested in this for scheduling multi-op stuff, it's free to take, whatever. Just ask me, I'll send you a link to a copy of it. Google Sheets does this, and it's really handy because operators can schedule their own time. And on what it's showing is on the left side, there's one column per band. The white is where the operators would put in their call signs. The colors with the numbers in them are the expected rate or the number of queues that we had last contest on that band at that time. So it gives everybody an idea of when are the hot hours, which are in the red down here, or the hours where the band may be just opening or closing, and then the slow times overnight, which always fill up last, of course. So everybody can look at this, you can juggle people back and forth. And then over on the right side, it's by operator. So the operator calls across the top, the total number of hours they sign up for. This is cut off. There's another, one column per operator, but it's just too small to see. And then it fills in automatically what band they're on. So you fill your call in over here, it keeps track of it over here, and if you accidentally put yourself on two bands, it puts a red error message there, and you can't be on two bands at once. So this is the way you can see, oh, you've got 2 hours off there, you have 4 hours, 5 hours off there. Figure out when you're sleeping, when you can get lunch, stuff like that. Seems to work out pretty good. Everybody catches on to it real quick, and it makes it easier Friday night because I can look across and see, well, wait a minute, you haven't been on for a few hours, but we need to fill in time on 20 meters at midnight or something. And I say, I make that, I start it usually about a month before the contest. So it gives everybody a couple weeks to get in and get their times in, and we can shuffle things back and forth. Propagation, of course, if you start watching the CQ, that new CQ Digi contest in August, and then the CQ RIDI contest in September, that's a pretty good preview, plus a good way to test the station out for the October and then November contests. I don't know what Space Environmental Center is doing something screwy. They're starting to make Ks not integers. They're putting 0.33, 0.67. I don't know what they think they're gaining, but they're breaking it in thirds or something.
More resolution.
Yeah. And I don't know if you really need it, but they're doing it. Makes the forecast look really weird. Okay, week before the contest. This is where we're really starting to get serious about it. Gotta go food shopping, non-perishable, soda, beer, stuff that's not going to go bad, cans, things like that. Start operational testing of everything. Make sure all the rotors rotate, all the antennas are tuned, everything's still working out there. And I have to start cleaning up the shack. By this time, especially October contests, I got stuff everywhere with repairing rotors and whatever. I just shovel that all underneath the table somewhere. Get rid of it for a while. Not that. Make sure all the headsets, DW keys, everything's out on the tables. They tend to migrate during contests. Somebody likes their personal key, they bring that and they put the other one somewhere else. So you got to find them and put them back where they belong. A charging station is a new thing. I got basically one of the big toolboxes in the shack. I just put a power strip, some USB charging things, and a whole bunch of extra cords. Because somebody always forgets their charging cord for their phone or whatever. So I've started supplying that recently. And of course, a lot of the soda and stuff goes in the shack fridge, and fill that up and get ready for the weekend. walking beverages. That's more like an ARRL contest weekend, but it's a good example. That post is a 2x4 post with a fiberglass rod across it, and then 2 electric fence insulators. It's a 2-wire beverage. It's the number 10 insulated copper weld. Well, that tree came down across it, and then that tree came down across it, the one behind it. Got a twofer in this show, whatever it was. So that necessitates another visit with the chainsaw and clean it back up, get the wires back up in the air. It's really not that urgent that this be done. The insulated copper weld, even if it's down part way, still works fine. But I hate to have too much of it because eventually it would all pull itself down. And in the winter, of course, then it freezes into the ground, and the quicker you can catch it, the faster it gets back up in the air.
That copper weld does not break.
No, it does not break.
I had bundled.
One note about that: at the ends of those 10 gauge copper welds, I've got the 1/4 inch double braided Dacron rope on each end. The only time I've seen them break, even in a big ice storm that pulled basically the whole thing's down, they didn't break. One time they broke, a moose had caught its antler in one of those wires, and it just ripped that rope just in half.
Wow.
Wrapped the copper weld around a couple trees, and then finally got itself loose and continued on its way. That was a mess. This is another mess. When I first made the 2-wire beverages, they didn't have reflection transformers like today. When I first got the reflection transformers, I thought, well, they should be enclosed or protected, something. So I went and put, coffee cans over the reflection transformers just to keep them dry. The bear must have been looking for his coffee fix. That's 2 tooth holes there, and another hole in that side. I said, yeah, I need to carry some more tools when I go out in the woods. At least in the fall and the spring. Winter, they're gone. They're hibernating up there. But and so that's 3 things I carry with me when I go out in the fall and the spring for checking the beverages. Those are the electric fence insulators I use. They don't really insulate anything. Again, it's because it's insulated copper weld already. It could just be tied to trees or nailed to them or whatever. But what's really nice is with the 2-wire ones, you get the 2x4 post, the fiberglass crossarm, and then these things screw on, so they lock themselves onto that crossarm. The tree comes down or a branch comes down on the wire, it pulls it off. It doesn't break the fiberglass, so you can just get the wire back out from under whatever hit it. Find the insulator if you can. Sometimes they fly off. Early in the fall, there's yellow leaves all over the ground. You can't see them. That's why I always carry a few extras with me. So, and they do break occasionally.
Dave, how many beverages?
How many?
How many? How many?
Well, there's 4 paths. 3 of them are 2-wire beverages. So there's north, south, southwest, northeast, northwest, southeast, and then 1 single wire one that's 1,000 feet northwest, just for JA. That one's just for terminated. So, and that one I haven't even put the posts up for yet. It's just tied to trees.
We're putting them on the poles with fiberglass versus the trees, because all of mine are on trees except the page.
Well,
Tree falls down, then you gotta redo it, but.
yeah, if the trees aren't always in the right place.
Yeah.
You're putting it into the tree, and if it breaks, then you've got to go back and drill another hole. And with the 2x4s, you just carry another 2x4 with the post, put that out, take the old one back, drill another hole back at the shop, and
Yeah.
it's a little easier, it's a little cleaner, and it doesn't leave fiberglass embedded in all the trees. Some other outside stuff. I kept trying to get a better picture of this. There's somewhere in here. You can barely see it. There's a radial wire from one of the inverted V or inverted L's for 160. And coming out here, there's a twig that's caught on it. Those are not insulated. They're aluminum wire. And something like that on Friday night can cost hours of annoyance. But every time 160 transmits, it puts hash all over everything. And you got to go out in the snowstorm Friday night trying to find one twig on one radial when these things are spread out over 500 feet as they're half wave apart, plus the radials. And oh, I've done that a couple times. Now I make sure I check them really good Friday. Okay, Monday. I started checklists. I actually have, I forgot to bring a couple. I actually have a checklist that I run for the major contests because there is just so much stuff that even you just can't remember all of it. And if you forget something, then you got to run around at the last minute. So starting about on Monday, besides the checklist, this is my 80-meter station here. We'll first set it up for remote operators to test their installations on. So I'll have the AnyDesk, the Mumble, and my apps for the monitoring the radio and controlling the amp, so that everybody can check in on that one and make sure they've got the mic levels set right. They know how to operate. I leave that on all week, and it's just there for testing. It also makes it easy for me to set up the log early and make sure that N1MM's working and all sorts of stuff like that. And thanks to YCCC for the meter, I take one cable off the back of the SWR meter and just kind of leave that hang there in between major contests. Because each weekend the modes change, I have to retune the two tuners for the inverted V's. They're just too narrow to just leave them. So I have settings for CW, sideband, and RIDI that give you about plus or minus 50 kilohertz from a center frequency. And that little zoom meter makes it really quick to do that. Don't even have to turn the radio on. That's the checklist. This is the eye chart version of it. So don't try and read it unless I don't even know if you could read it up close. But we'll go see what some of the pieces of it are anyway. First part, well before the contest. This is stuff that's kind of already been done by the time I bring out the actual checklist. You know, cleaning, shopping, a lot of that's already underway, stuff before plowing, shopping. Yeah. So I've already said that, we start on the 80-meter station, set up the log, set the power to minimum. Again, that's stuff I would do like Monday. Tuesday is usually shopping day. Soda, drinks, all the other stuff that I don't have. Wednesday. Usually N1MM comes out with the update either Tuesday or Wednesday. So I check and see if they've got an update for the software and figure out if we need any of it. Anything they've changed is going to affect this current contest. If it doesn't, I don't use it, because I've already had the previous one running on the remote station from the week before and on the 80-meter station for setting up the log. So there's a lot of times I won't go with the latest release. I'll keep what I've got. And again, cleaning, more cleaning. It's amazing how much dust builds up between contests.
And the multi-op needs to be all the same version.
Right, yes, it's important for that is when you're doing the multi-op, all the computers have to have the same version of N1MM, the same country file. We'll see that here. That's coming up. Now I make you all hungry for dinner. This is typical things that start on Thursday when I take and cook either barbecue chicken legs, make pulled pork. This is starting pork tenderloins, smoking to be pulled.
And that occasional moose butt.
Yeah, I stay away from the moose. I don't really think there's an open season for moose in Massachusetts. Again, Thursday, finish cleaning, set up the dining room, set up the kitchen. Get a whole counter full of munchies and whatever up there for anybody to come up and do what they want. And fairly often Thursday night, operators start showing up. A couple of guys that have long drive from New York City or whatever come along and camp out and sleep in Friday and help me do the last minute stuff. More checklist. It's a lot of stuff on this. These are the miscellaneous things that I do on Friday. And again, if you miss some of these, you say, oh, wait a minute, I really need to do that. These things are displays I put up on I have a big TV up at one end. Neighbor gave me his old TV after he upgraded, and it wasn't high enough resolution for his new 4K Roku thing. So he gave me his old, I think it's a 32-inch or whatever, up on top of one end of the shack. And I put a couple displays up there so everybody can see the current K indexes and all that stuff. And the weather, which lets you know if you look, you suddenly hear all this noise. And you look up there and see these big red bands of stuff coming across. And it's either rain static or snow static. Fans, change the heat ducts so you're not putting heat into the shack. Breaker fan. You should know about this. There's more than one way to trip a breaker. I've got a 100-amp branch box in the shack that powers everything in the shack. 100-amp breaker in main box that's a 200-amp service into the house. We have blown that 100-amp breaker. Not on an instantaneous trip, but on heat. There's a thermal trip in there that if you're drawing near 100 amps for too long, it trips. And it won't reset until it cools down. It's a real pain when you're starting out in it. We've only done it in RTTY and digital contests. We've never had it happen doing just CW or just sideband. The transmissions are less overlapping. But FT8 is really bad. You get all 6 stations starting to transmit on the same time period. And boy, that draws a lot of power. So
it's synchronized.
And it's synchronized. So when we're doing FT8 or FT4, I make sure you're in period 1, you're in period even or odd, whatever they call it. So everybody's not keying up at the same time at least. I do have a backup generator, an 18 kW propane powered off a 500-gallon tank. The only problem is the battery charger that's in there makes noise on 160 meters. And I tried to get to every year I have a service guy comes and cleans it, oil change and all this stuff. And it's the only time I can get to the battery and the charger because they're built in under the control panel. You gotta take the whole thing apart to get down to the battery. I tried putting some ferrates on it. It doesn't do it. I just go out, turn the breaker off. It's quiet. And it doesn't have to be on to start the generator. It just trickle charges the battery. N1MM Network Web Status app. I'll show you that in a second, what it does. Web status. Turn on the outside floodlights so people can see when they get out of their car. And then Mumble, this is a new addition, with the remote stuff, is I keep Mumble running on my laptop in the shack with the audio coming out to speakers. So somebody in the shack can hear a remote operator calling for help. And then I also have it running on my hub computer, which is the N1MM master, the one that receives all the DX spots and divides them up to go to the bands, whatever. I leave it on there. I've got a headset on there with a 20-foot cord. So I can put on the headset, go walk over to any station and talk to the remote operators that might be using it. Help fix their problems. And then I have one upstairs that has audio that goes to a monitor that has speakers. So anybody that's upstairs can hear anybody that's down there calling for help. Makes communications a little bit easier. You can also, with Mumble, there's a text chat that you can also use, which is handy sometimes. You want to send announcements out to everybody. This was one I came up with because we're running with some remote operators, some local operators, and I want to know who's on which bands, are they active, and what are they doing? So this is an app I run on my laptop. It listens for a broadcast from all of the other computers from N1MM, telling them what frequency, what mode, who the operator is, and the station name, and puts it into this table, which updates every 5 minutes. So I can look at that and say, okay, the ones that are in green have transmitted within the last 5 minutes. So I know they're active, somebody's doing something. The CW remote is a dummy call sign that I tell the operators when you get off. I'll show this one later. As you get off, a lot of times you just put up the op1 thing. If you know about that, op1 is the N1MM mechanism for changing the current operator on a station. And if you leave it blank, it does weird things. So I tell them put in CW remote, SSB remote, RIDI remote. I'm going to change that eventually again, but for now, that's the way it does it. So I know there's no operator currently signed in on 80 meters. And Alan, who left to go back to bed, was on 160.
What's Freak 2 Mode 2? Is that the last
That's
update?
That's for the second VFO, or on the SO2R station, the second radio. For the second VFO, it's really not that useful unless you're doing splits or something. But if you're doing SO2R with other multi-ops, it might be useful for that. So I put it there, but it's kind of limited use. Okay, as I say, the last email to the operators Friday morning, usually equipment updates, propagation notes, last call to fill in on the schedule before I start filling you in. And then the N1MM bugs. Tom's not here, no? Okay. Op1 sometimes closes the telnet window. Haven't figured out why. They haven't figured out why, but sometimes it doesn't. And it's really annoying. You sit there, you're not getting any spots. So you set the spot timeout for 10 minutes or 30 minutes, once all your spots go away. Help. Well, I tell everybody I had just reopened with Windows Telnet and away you go. This was a brand new one. This op1 can cause the ESM to stop working in CW. And other modes probably too, but you noticed it on CW. I know what the problem is. They've got to figure out how to fix it. It's a change. This is one of those changes that I may not have accepted if I knew that it had a side effect. But it's just one of those things, and you can get it back real quick. You just got to do Control M twice, or go to the menu, uncheck it, go back to the menu, check it. It's just annoying. If you're doing an FT8, FT4 type contest, you can't type op on in the window because WSJTX keeps trying to send the current call into the entry window. If you're really fast in typing, you got to delete what's there and type it, and then you can do it. Otherwise, the fix is you just click on any other window and do Control O. But it's not intuitively obvious if you don't know what's going on. And again, this one, not leaving the op on window, the little entry window that you put up there. If you leave that up there, after so many seconds of not doing anything with it, it suddenly changes the call sign on that station to the station call sign. And it starts sending out weird things to my app that tries to pick it off. And so that's another reason for those SSB remotes and whatever in that. These are things, most people who do single ops at home, you never see this, but it's what we got put up with doing multi-ops. Again, last outside checks on Friday, repeating quick check of the beverages, especially if the weather's been bad. I'm sure there's something down out there now. We've had some horrible winds this weekend. Plow or sand, turn on outside lights. This one I'm showing, it's back here. That's a tree that came down this last week over the northwest beverage. I haven't gotten out there yet with the chainsaw, but that's going to be a mess to clean up.
Did Hank find that?
Yeah, Hank and I have another picture of Pablo there too. But he got up to it and he kind of looked at it and said, "Wait a minute, that's our trail. Where do we go?" Because there's a trail that I have that goes across that little bridge and then back around. And he said, "Where are we going?" To do all this stuff, I've come up with two different batch files. One's actually an old DOS style batch. The other one's a PowerShell script that copies, deletes or copies a bunch of different stuff. I'm not going to try and go through all the details of it. If anybody's interested, it needs to set up multiple computers for contests, and get in touch with me, I'll send them along to you. But basically, I end up putting all of the supplemental files, the function keys, the log itself, the super check, the country file on my server, which could be any computer, but I have a server, so I use that. And then there's this one script that puts everything there. There's things you set up in the log. We're going to go through a lot of this quick because there's a lot of details that most of you have seen. You may not have thought about it, but all the things that have to go on to the server before you can set up the update.bat is the one that puts N1MM updates on the server on all the computers. Turning on the stations. Now, all the software is kind of set up, ready to go. There's an APC bug that APC hasn't fixed, Charlie.
Okay.
It's a really weird one.
We don't fix weird.
Was it one of the 1500 VA
Yeah,
brand new ones? Brand new ones. I actually bought 3 of them.
yeah. You didn't go to meet from discount?
Yeah, I was in a hurry because my big one died. I needed replacements. You leave it sit for a month between contests. You go push the button to turn it on. It just sits there and doesn't do anything. You got to unplug the battery. You got to unplug it from the wall. plug it back in, plug the battery back in, starts right up.
Oh, that's a feature.
I reported it to APC. The first time when I bought 3 of these things a couple of years ago. Reported it to APC. I was seeing this regularly on 2 of them. Third one seemed okay. They sent me 2 brand new ones. Great. Plug them in. A month later, they did the same thing.
It was a feature.
It's a feature.
Designed that way.
Energy conservation.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. I reported it again. They haven't done anything else that I know of. The second script I have is this remote tool setup, which runs on 5 of the 6 logging computers. Does things like starting the Comport sharing app, Green Heron controls, a Mumble client, and all the little things that the operators need to operate remotely. When you run that first script, it sets up all this stuff over on the right side. So that's all the tools that either a local or remote operator needs to use. You can see a lot more about this on my last presentation about the remote operators and stuff, where it explains what all those things do. Then run the update script, which updates N1MM, deletes per operator settings and stuff, and then copies all those files back from the server so they're ready to operate. And then start up N1MM. So you got the N1MM windows. Why did that's cut off? No, that's the hub. That's my hub station, which just has Mumble and N1MM. It doesn't have a radio. So it just sits there by itself. A regular logging station has all those radio controls, Mumble and whatever, and then N1MM over top of it. The master hub station, whatever you want to call it, you have to set up on there which of my nodes. I have 3 AR cluster nodes running internally. One of them is available to the world. It only has human spots. But then I have separate ones that have skimmer spots for the digital skimmer spots now. But those are only available inside. This is where it gets complicated because I go around to each of the stations and either do or don't do certain things. You know, this whole bunch in here is all the default setups. Setting goals has to be done manually on each station. Setting DI buttons, the WSJT, the digital stuff, you gotta do that on each one. There's no way I found to actually automate that and get it working right. So there's a lot of manual steps in this, depending on what the contest is and what you're working on. Hardware settings. The biggest ones are the transmit and receive switches. There's 5 stations that have manual switches, coax switches, that redirect that band to the SO2R station. It's the way it normally runs during weekdays. On the weekends for the multi-multis, you flip the switch and it goes to the station that's right there. So with basically 5 switches, I can move all the transmit antennas. And the receive, there's 2 bands, 80 and 160. You have switches that do the same thing. They redirect the receive antennas to either the single band stations or to the SO2R. One thing I've taken to recently is I'm limiting the max power out of the radios to 50 watts. Because all the amps I've got now should put out 1500 if you put in 50 watts in. And I have found that a lot of operators they're not seeing 1500 and they start turning up at 60, 70, 75. Not a good thing. Not for the long-term use of amps anyway. I have to disconnect the PTT interlock from the SO2R station. There's one Green Heron box that does all the transmit antennas. Normally, it's interlocked with the two radios on the SO2R station. But if I left that on, nobody would be able to change the antennas as long as 40 meters is transmitted. Not a good thing. And last minute tests of everything, checking tuners, tuning the amps, all that good stuff. I showed you the miscellaneous manual stuff. Just one extra one that's got its own little checklist section. Delete the empty log from the server. Very, very important. Because if you get in the middle of the contest, and even after the first hour, we need to change the function keys. There's something wrong with the function key definitions. You rerun the update, it replaces the log you've already got contacts in with the empty log that's on the server. So as soon as it's got the log on all the machines, delete that one from the server so it never comes back again.
How he knows this.
T-minus, yeah, how do I know that? Fortunately, if you realize it before you've replaced all of them, you can copy any one of them to all the others and it works.
That's all.
Yeah, that's off time. T-minus 10 minutes. Go around to all the stations, and I used to make on the fly, make a new log right at the beginning. I've made 2 blank logs in the same file and just switch to the other one. It's a lot easier. And they're off. Now I go away, pour a stiff drink, sit down a second,
Wait for the troubles.
and wait for the panic alarms to go off. Yes, there is a panic alarm that's on every screen. That they push that and it sets off this 120 dB buzzer upstairs. Oh. Dogs hate it. But it'll wake you up in the middle of the night, even after the stiff drink. Skip ahead. All done. This I'm not going to talk about operating. Sunday, stiff drink. Go around and look for the orphan cords, the chargers, the phones, things, whatever that are left in the bunk rooms, under the tables, who knows. Almost always find something. This time for CW, I found a pair of slippers, real nice fuzzy ones. A pair of gloves and some little adapter for power cord. I don't know what the heck that's from. It looks like it's a European to US. Somebody must have had a European charger they plugged in. I don't know where that came from. And then we start the post-contest checklist, which is relatively simple. Basically go back after resyncing the logs. You know, something that single ops don't know about is you can get 6 different logging computers, in my case actually 8 computers on the network, all keeping the log. You come down Saturday or Sunday night, they don't all have the same score.
Yeah.
What do? You know, N1MM has a tool that you run this thing, it resyncs between all the computers. Takes a little while, but it gets it, and then you rescore, and hopefully they all come up with the same score. Doesn't do it every time the first time. And turn off stuff, reconnect the remotes, switch the switches back to the SO2R remote station so they can start doing it, turn the coffee pot off, stop the breaker fan, don't need that. Turn the generator charger back on, then process the log. And we're still not done.
How many drinks are you up tonight?
Yeah, it depends.
Depends on the number of alarms.
You know, the next week, it's finish the cleanup, you know, puff, whatever. Start fixing broken stuff is a big one. And then finish up the post contest when I usually give the log to W1TO to let him fix the notes and do the 3830 report, do the, you know, all that stuff.
And the sweepstakes guy arrives.
Yeah. No, the sweepstakes was before. Saturday, it's the final stuff from that weekend. Take all the empty cans to the dump, give them to the Boy Scouts. Massachusetts, I don't know about Connecticut, where Massachusetts are worth a nickel apiece. They take great big trash bag full of nickel apiece cans and bottles to the dump. That's it. All done.